In the county of Kent, in England, there is a man-made cave system where, over centuries, within 22 miles of tunnels, early man began to extract the chalk and flint that form the Kent Hills. The caverns go back at least 8,000 years. The temperature in the caves is a constant 35. One should dress warm if one were to explore, and should you wish to explore, only do so with a cave guide. The caves are dangerous in places, pitch black without the guide's torchlight and a lantern they supply you with, and extensive. If you get lost in those caves, you are not coming out for a day or two, if at all. During the Second World War, the caves served as a respite to hundreds of South Londoners, physically and mentally exhausted by the German bombing raids. There were beds down there, a chapel where people would pray, and even a hospital. It was cramped and stifling, but people were together, and their good old London camaraderie got them through. Some say that there's a lot of anxious emotion trapped down in the tunnels. Before modern Londoners made use of the caves, it was used by druids. They carried out their sacrificial rituals, and you'll hear about this from the guides. They will also turn out the lights so you can experience the inky blackness of the chambers. Such misery experienced in the caves. They say stone can act like a tape recorder, absorbing memories, absorbing trauma. Chalk, being porous, must have absorbed quite some horrific events. The caves are rumored to be haunted by a woman murdered there by her husband. She occupies an area known as the Haunted Pool, where he drowned her in the subterranean body of water. They are also haunted by the Anglo-Saxon druids, who carried out their ritualistic sacrifices. A cavalier and a black dog are supposed to represent the devil. Many years ago, after the war had ended, the owners of the caves ran a challenge. 5 pounds to anyone who could stay in the caves overnight and live to tell the tale. 5 British pounds was a lot of money in those days, but still, not many wanted to, or indeed did, accept the challenge, until 2 men thought it would be a good idea to accept the challenge. Both being skeptics, they thought that it would be easy, a walk in the park. We thought it would be an easy way to get some beer. We just felt we were the men for the job. No one was going to mess with us. I was 6'2" and no lightweight, and Dean is 6'5" and 17 stone. We could easily look after ourselves. We prepared for the night by getting together some essentials: hard hats, rope, water, food, torches, sleeping bags, and dry clothes. We also brought matches or cigarettes, some cards to while away the hours, a couple of books, candles, all the things you might expect for a night underground. I wasn't scared. I had been down the caves 100, if not more times before. That's an exaggeration. Twice. I wasn't scared though. Why should I be? The stories were all made up to increase the tourism in the area. Everyone loves a ghost story, so why shouldn't the caves have one? It would be a long night, I knew that, but not a scary one. As we entered the caves, the heavy iron doors at the entrance were closed behind us. That was the first time I had been in the caves alone. I didn't know Dean that well, had only known him 2 months when he started at my firm. We got on well, both interested in motorbikes and girls, so this challenge was a bit of a laugh to us. A thought crossed my mind. Could I trust this guy? I told myself to ignore that thought. Of course I could. There is a gradual downward sloping incline, as you may imagine, as you go down into the caverns. Underneath is well worn, from thousands of footsteps over thousands of years. A shiny, compacted chalk that glistens in the torchlight like marble. The coldness surrounds you. You touch your face and feel the clamminess on your skin immediately. Airborne water droplets coat your skin, so tiny you cannot feel them. Only the moistness of your bare skin. Dean broke the silence.
You okay?
I told him I was, although I felt quite unsure. It was different when you were there with the tour and the tour guides. Alone, just one companion, well, it took a whole different atmosphere. The shadows seemed darker, blacker, the quietness seemed deafening, and the coldness seemed to enter your bones. I pulled my jacket closer around me. We kept walking.
So, where are you thinking about bedding down for the night?
Dean asked. Has to be the haunted pool, wouldn't you say? I laughed. Dean was happy with that. We had a map and followed our scribbles deeper and deeper into the caves.
Have you heard about the Cavalier ghost?
I answered with a laugh. I had, but could not give it much credence, just like any of the ghost stories. I didn't believe them. This bet was more to prove my skepticism was well-founded than just the money. It was laughable what people believed. We finally found ourselves outside the haunted pool chamber. We could hear the water continually dripping down from the stalactites that had formed. We threw our rucksacks on the floor and entered the chamber, shining our torches around the walls and into the pool's icy blue water. Do you believe the story of the woman in white who was murdered by her husband? I asked Dean.
They say it's true and that her bones were discovered, so why should I not believe it?
Ghost stories, I scoffed. Having looked around the haunted pool, we decided the quicker we settled down for the night, the quicker it would be over, and the quicker we could get back to the sunlight. Your eyes adjust to the blackness to a degree, but you know they are straining to see what lies beyond in the blackness. I have to say, at this point, I'm telling this tale so you don't make the same stupid mistakes we did. I'll never forget Dean. That's the truth. We quickly find our discarded rucksacks and pulled out our supplies. It had been 6 p.m. when we entered the caves, and now it was at least 7 p.m. I put my sleeping bag down, brought out some candles and the matches and lit one. That would save battery power. We took everything we needed out and arranged it within easy reach. We decided on a good old-fashioned cup of English tea that Dean had brought, ready-made in a thermos can. Wow, did it taste good? It was nice to feel the warmth coming through the plastic cup and warming my hands. It was nice to have a hot liquid inside me warming my core temperature. We quickly began chatting about people and problems at work, and I began to feel more relaxed. This wasn't going to be such a bad night after all. We both laid down facing each other with the candle between us.
What are you going to spend your $5 on then?
Beer, I laughed. We both laughed. That was a given. Immediately after we said that, there was a cold, icy blast of air that came hurtling, it seemed, into the chambers we occupied.
Unusual.
Must be a reason for it. Updraft from somewhere?
We are deep in the heart of the earth. Where is a draft going to come from?
Another exit? A cave chimney? You know it's poor as stuffed chalk. There may be a chimney that has opened and wind funnels down it. I liked my logical explanation. It reassured me. Then we felt another icy cold blast, and this time it blew out the candle.
Fuck,
Dean whispered. I immediately turned on my torch. That's when we heard it. A scream like the most unholy thing you have ever heard. It was high-pitched and loud. I mean loud. We weren't imagining that. It was real. We both looked at each other.
What the fuck?
Dean asked. We realized we were now both sitting next to each other on my sleeping bag and holding hands at this point. I shook my hand free. It's the cave owners pranking us. I tried to convince us both.
Then what in God's name is that?
He was pointing towards the entrance of the haunted pool chamber, his voice and his hand trembling. I followed his gaze and was amazed to see a mist forming. I reached out for my camera and took a few shots. This was some strange phenomenon I was not familiar with. With the caves being a constant temperature, there should be no mist, no humidity. I snapped some more with my camera.
Stop it!
Dean snapped, backing his body towards the wall. Don't be mad, I answered.
Not you, her!
He pointed, but I could see nothing but the mist. Her, I asked.
Run! Get the fuck out of here!
He shouted. I wasn't that easily scared until I realized it was probably the best thing to do. Dean was surrounded by the mist. I watched, open-mouthed and wide-eyed as the mist seemed to form into the shape of a woman. It caressed him, her ghostly hand stroking his hair, his chest. He looked absolutely petrified. He could not move. He was frozen. I knew then I would run. I turned on my heels and fled. I'm ashamed to say, into the blackness. I only had my torch, nothing else. I didn't know which way to go. My map was back at the base in the tunnels. I ran and ran, stumbling, crashing into walls, my heart beating hard. I was petrified. Dean was a strong bloke, skeptical too. He would not have been frozen like that if it wasn't something truly terrifying. I kept running. Luck was on my side. I made it back to the incline that led from the entrance to the caves, and I banged on that door with all my might. And I bellowed and begged for help, but no one came. It was with fear in the pit of my bowels. I realized no one would be there till 9 a.m. the next morning. I decided to barricade myself with whatever was available. I would hide. Nothing would find me. No demon, ghost, apparition, or ghoul was going to devour my soul this night. There were some wooden folding tables near the entrance, which had leaflets and lanterns on them. I upturned too, not caring about the noise that might attract a demon or fiend, and dragged them to the cave entrance. I was barricaded betwixt the tables and the door. I felt safer, and I kept my head down and slowed my breathing, and I kept very, very still, and I waited. And I waited for something to come for me, or for Dean to stroll toward me. But nothing, and no one came. With my hand clasped firmly around my knees, I rocked back and forth, trying to block out the screams emanating from below. I knew they were screams of a dying man. I could do nothing to help. I was petrified. I was crying and urinated all over myself. At least the warmth from my pee kept me a little warmer for a short while. Then it turned cold and colder. After what seemed an age, Dean's screams stopped, and I thought he had overcome whatever it was. The white lady, seeking her revenge, some demonic force. He would be with me soon. I stayed awake all night, not moving my eyes from the blackness that led down and down into the underworld. I stayed there and did not move, and that was how they found me. I fell out of the cave, the light blinding me. My dirty and tear-stained face must have horrified them. I mumbled something about Dean needing help and being by the pool. 6 strong tour guides rushed into the cave system. I was led out of the caves, and they sat me down and wrapped me in a blanket. An ambulance was called, and I sat there shivering, trying to swallow some hot tea a local lady had brought over. The ambulance arrived. I was taken to the accident and emergency department of the local Bromley hospital. So was Dean. But Dean, they said, had an epileptic fit and had bitten off his tongue. He would never speak again. I knew this was not the truth. Dean was not epileptic. He had never had a fit. He had lost a lot of blood and was in a coma. His rehabilitation took many, many months. I looked after his fiver for him and would not use mine until he could have a drink with me. Over a pint many years later, Dean told me by letter that he had been accosted by what appeared to be the ghost of a woman in white, who at first seemed beautiful. But as he had stared at her, her eyes began to bulge and her skin fell away. She had come with the mist. She was the mist. This is the rest of what he wrote. I felt my mouth become dry and my heart was pounding. I knew you had gone. I was glad you had gone. At first, she had caressed me. She seemed beautiful, and it was quite a nice feeling at first. Then, when she changed, I realized I was in the presence of not a ghost, but a demon. I think the demon controls her. She wants to find peace and escape the caves, go back to the light and be rested. But the demon, he controls her, takes over her apparition. I smelt him. He smelt of feces, of sulfur, of all unnatural and hideous things. He pressed his face close to mine. I began screaming like a madman. He grabbed my tongue, pulled it out from my mouth, and then he hit me from underneath my jaw. It's true. I did bite off my own tongue, but he made me. Then he mentally tortured me, put all these things in my head of dying children, maggots, flies, wicked things, people being murdered. I don't know who they are, but the visions, they were so real, so strong. I began to pray whilst I pressed down really hard with the roof of my mouth on my tongue. I tried to stop the bleeding. I said the Our Father in my head, and he lifted me up by my neck and threw me against the other wall. He would not let me out. I tried running. I couldn't move. Eventually, I passed out from blood loss. They got me a psychoanalyst because I insisted on the truth. No one believes me. You believe me, don't you? I put my hand on top of his and squeezed it. Yes, I believed him. I nodded. A single tear fell from his left eye. He had not only lost his tongue, he had lost so much. His job, his family, his sanity, his ability to speak coherently. The challenge has since been withdrawn.